In our headlines on this Monday, November 17th, here in South Korea, President Lee Jae Myung takes off earlier this morning for a diplomatic trip that takes him to the UAE, Egypt, South Africa and Turkey over a period of 10 days to promote partnership in trade, technology and defense. Meanwhile, South Korea's big business players, including Samsung and SK Hynix, pledged a multi-billion US dollar investment plan for their home ground in a meeting at the Yongsan presidential office this past weekend. And staying in the country, cold snap hits commuters on this Monday, with the daytime high hovering at just 5 degrees Celsius here in capital Seoul, as weather forecasters project an even colder tomorrow. Earlier this morning, President Lee Jae Myung departed for his 10-day four-nation diplomatic tour of the Middle East and Africa. Our presidential office correspondent Song Yoo-jin shares a preview of his agenda.
President Lee Jae Myung begins his four-nation trip in the United Arab Emirates, South Korea's only special strategic partner in the Middle East.
Through this visit, President Lee's first to the Middle East since taking office. We plan to expand cooperation beyond the four key areas of investment: defense, nuclear power, and energy, into advanced technology, healthcare, and culture.
After arriving in Abu Dhabi on Monday afternoon, the president will visit the National Memorial and the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque, where the country's founding president is laid to rest. He will end day one with a meeting with members of the local Korean community. On Tuesday, he will hold a summit with UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, followed by an MOU signing ceremony and lunch. The MOUs will cover areas including artificial intelligence, business cooperation, and defense. Eyes are on the scale of the defense deal between the two countries. Presidential Chief of Staff Kang Won-sik, currently visiting the Middle East as a special envoy for strategic economic cooperation, wrote on social media on Sunday that he delivered President Lee's personal letter to the UAE president, expressing Seoul's hope of elevating bilateral cooperation to a new level. Kang added that the president's visit aims to secure, quote, tangible results in AI, defense, energy, and logistics. On Wednesday, Lee will attend the South Korea-UAE Business Roundtable and meet Korean special forces stationed in the country. The president's next stop is Egypt, where he will hold talks with President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and deliver a lecture at Cairo University on the administration's Middle East strategy. He will then travel to South Africa to attend the G20 Leaders Summit in Johannesburg, the latest in a series of major multilateral forums he has joined this year, including the G7 Summit, the UN General Assembly, the ASEAN Summit, and the APEC Leaders Meeting.
President Lee will underscore South Korea's commitment to solidarity and cooperation, not only with South Africa, but with Africa as a whole, and express our willingness to contribute to the continent's development.
President Lee's final stop will be a state visit to Turkey. There, he will meet President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to strengthen the strategic partnership in defense, nuclear energy, and cutting-edge industries. South Korea's presidential jet will return home next Wednesday. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
Now, ahead of his departure for his latest diplomatic agenda, the president sat down with business leaders at the top office in Yongsan this past Sunday as they shared their substantial investment plans for the domestic arena. Our Oh Soo-young reports.
South Korea's largest conglomerates are pledging tens of billions of dollars for domestic factories, advanced technology and new jobs, as concerns rise that expanding US operations could draw capital away from home. Samsung on Sunday unveiled an investment plan worth 450 trillion won, which is around $310 billion over 5 years for semiconductors, AI computing, displays and advanced batteries. It will also hire 60,000 people domestically and expand support programs for small and mid-sized suppliers across more than 1,000 partner companies. Hyundai Motor Group announced its largest ever domestic plan, committing 125.2 trillion won, or around $86.5 billion, through 2030. This includes roughly $17.2 billion a year for AI, robotics, EVs and hydrogen systems. The group will increase hiring to 10,000 recruits next year. These announcements came as President Lee Jae Myung met the heads of Korea's major industrial groups at the Yongsan presidential office on Sunday. The 2-hour session took place after the release of the Korea-US Joint Fact Sheet, which summarized the outcome of the recent tariff and security talks, including Seoul's large-scale investment into American industries. South Korea's private sector, including Samsung, SK, Hyundai and LG, is expected to pitch in $150 billion. President Lee thanked executives for their role during the negotiations. However, he asked them to ensure that domestic investment and regional projects do not fall behind as US operations expand, emphasizing the importance of local employment and balanced growth alongside SMEs. While Samsung and Hyundai set the tone with the most consequential announcements, other conglomerates followed with large-scale domestic commitments. SK Group is expanding its investment beyond $88.3 billion, while LG Group plans $69 billion, focused on key materials and parts. Hanwha will spend $7.6 billion on domestic shipbuilding and defense, and HD Hyundai will invest $10.3 billion across energy and marine technologies. Celltrion will double its bioventure fund to $690 million. President Lee emphasized that enabling companies to act freely and creatively on the global stage is one of the government's core responsibilities. He pledged to review a range of support measures, including deregulation going forward. 오수영, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, a new parliamentary report predicts South Korea's manufacturing sector will slow down while its services sector will see growth next year. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon covers this outlook and its broader implications.
The nation's manufacturing sector is expected to suffer as its growth is being stymied by U.S. tariffs. According to a midterm economic outlook by the National Assembly Budget Office on Monday, real value added growth for manufacturing is projected at 1.5% next year. This is a 0.3 percentage point decline from this year's 1.8%. Also, its outlook is showing a declining trend throughout 2026, with the first half reaching 1.6% and the latter half 1.4%. The report attributes the slowdown to the escalating impact of U.S. tariff policies and a delayed recovery in domestic construction. The outlook for key industries is also uncertain. With semiconductors, there are concerns of a price drop amid heightened competition from Chinese suppliers. Meanwhile, the automotive industry also faces headwinds from slowing global demand.
Unless we develop a truly groundbreaking product, one with significant exclusive power, or unless such an innovative product emerges, if we continue to compete with the products we currently have, it seems to be a natural trend, in some respects, that the value-added rate will continue to fall.
Meanwhile, the services sector's real value-added growth is estimated to rise to 2.0% next year, an increase of 0.6 percentage points from this year's 1.4%. This forecast is half a percentage point higher than that for the manufacturing sector. Key upward factors include rising healthcare demand from an aging population and growth in the transport sector, supported by stable oil prices and increased domestic foreign travel. This trend is expected to become structural. National Assembly Budget Office projects services sector growth to hold at around 2.0% through 2029, while manufacturing is forecast to settle in the 1.7% range after 2027. Experts note that as manufacturing bases shift to the U.S., domestic facility investment will weaken. A researcher from the Korea Economic and Industrial Research Institute stressed the need for policy designed to attract foreign corporate facilities and induce foreign capital into South Korea. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And at the National Assembly, rival lawmakers are counting down 2 weeks before the deadline of a crucial vote for next year's budget. That being said, on this Monday, the Budget Subcommittee began reviewing spending plans of 20 ministries. The points of contention between the ruling Democratic Party and the main opposition People Power Party include the Presidential Office's Special Activity Fund, the Growth Fund for Advanced Industries, and a Rural Basic Income Program. Once the subcommittee completes its review, it will move to a full evaluation and then a plenary vote before the December 2nd deadline. South Korea's military has proposed inter-Korean talks to address escalating tensions after repeated incidents of North Korean troops crossing the military demarcation line while planting landmines and constructing tactical roads. On Monday, the South Korean Defense Ministry said in a statement that it has engaged in warning broadcasts and warning shots in line with protocol, but is concerned that continued incidents could lead to an unintended clash. Officials believe the problem stems from the loss of markers installed after the armistice agreement in 1953, leaving both sides with differing views of the border. Accordingly, Seoul has called for dialogue with Pyongyang at the inter-Korean truce village of Panmunjom. The presidential office has rejected speculation of a sharp surge in South Korea's defense cost sharing based on details in its joint document with the U.S. According to the National Security Council, the allocated $33 billion in comprehensive support for U.S. Forces Korea is not a fresh burden, but a 10-year estimate combining South Korea's existing contributions with other long-standing indirect support, including rent-free land, utilities, and tax exemptions. The top office stressed that the calculation excludes costs for combined military exercises, as well as the deployment of U.S. strategic assets. It also made clear that the 12th bilateral cost-sharing agreement will not be amended, and that media reports of a threefold rise in contributions are completely false. The U.S. Chief of Naval Operations believes Washington would expect Seoul to make use of its future fleet of nuclear-powered submarines to counter potential threats by China. Our Lee Jae covers this belief and more.
The United States Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Gerald R, said it would be a natural expectation for Washington to anticipate South Korea using a nuclear-powered submarine in the future to help counter growing Chinese threats.
I think the United States would expect partnership, again, working as an alliance together to meet our combined goals on what the United States considers to be our pacing threat, which is China.
He added that with such a capability, the United States would expect allied cooperation to meet combined goals against what Washington considers its primary pacing threat. He noted that South Korea shares many of the same concerns regarding China and that the new platform should be seen as part of the broader strategic equation. His remarks came after the United States officially approved South Korea's pursuit of its first nuclear-powered submarine. The decision was included in a joint fact sheet summarizing the summit between President Lee Jae Myung and President Donald Trump on October 29th. Washington continues to encourage allies to increase defense spending and contribute to collective defense efforts amid a deepening strategic rivalry with China. During the summit in Gyeongju, President Lee requested U.S. approval for nuclear-fueled supplies for conventionally armed submarines, arguing that the move would help track North Korean and Chinese vessels and ease operational burdens on U.S. forces. Admiral Cottle said a nuclear-powered submarine offers a completely different level of deterrence capability, and that operating such a vessel will likely elevate South Korea's responsibilities, both regionally and globally. Cottle also said combined naval drills in international waters of the West Sea remain an option when countering Chinese threats. Currently, most joint exercises are held in the eastern and southern waters off the Korean peninsula. He also expressed confidence that South Korea will play an important role in strengthening American shipbuilding capacity during his visits to local shipyards. Although legal limits exist on cooperation involving combat vessels, he said the two countries can move forward quickly on support platforms such as supply ships, auxiliary vessels, refueling tankers, and car carriers. Lee Jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the top U.S. military commander here in South Korea has highlighted the crucial role that Seoul can play to ensure regional stability by simply shifting the perspective on the map. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung explains.
Presenting an East-Up map, U.S. Forces Korea Commander General Xavier Bronson explained hidden strategic advantages of the Indo-Pacific and the critical role South Korea can play in the region, underlining the strategic triangle it can make with Japan and the Philippines. pointing out how traditional maps with the standard north-up projection can obscure the region's strategic importance. The general said in an article on the USFK website that troops positioned inside the bubble perimeter can play a significant role in the event of a contingency. With the map shifted with east orientation toward the top, the map clearly shows the strategic value of what South Korea can do. The peninsula can impose cost on Russia, not allowing its fleet to come into waters east of Korea, while imposing cost on China in the waters off its west coast. More significantly, a strategic triangle can be seen connecting Korea, Japan, and the Philippines. Each mutual defense partner with the U.S. could be viewed as one of the three verticals of a triangle, making the collective potential easier to see. By country, he mentioned how the three countries are each equipped with unique capabilities: Korea's central depth, Japan's technological advantage and maritime reach, and the Philippines' access to key southern sea lanes. In a separate note to reporters, the general added that this strategic triangle is not about forming a new alliance, but rather about recognizing geographic relationships that already exist and finding practical ways to coordinate. General Brunson's such views come at a time when the role and scale of the 28,500 USFK troops could be adjusted as the U.S. seeks to modernize the alliance. While highlighting the hidden geometry of alliance cooperation in the Indo-Pacific with the East-Up map, the USFK chief further recommended allies and partners to also incorporate these alternative perspectives to build a shared understanding of geographic relationships. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
In other news, the largest aircraft carrier in the world entered the Caribbean Sea this past weekend as part of a U.S. show of strength against Venezuela, given the Trump administration's war on drugs. Our Ian Jin has details.
The world's largest and most expensive aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, arrived in the Caribbean on Sunday. The Maritime Forces operations in the U.S. Southern Command, or SOUTHCOM area of responsibility, come to support President Donald Trump's directive to dismantle transnational criminal organizations and counter narco-terrorism to stop the flow of drugs into the U.S. The Ford rounds off the largest buildup of U.S. firepower in the region in generations, and with its 4,000 sailors and dozens of military aircraft aboard the lead ship, the Operation Southern Spear mission now includes nearly a dozen Navy ships and about 12,000 sailors and Marines. This continues the Trump administration's buildup of American forces in the region. The Ford's arrival coincided with the U.S. military's announcement of its latest deadly strike on Saturday, killing 3 men on a small boat it claims was ferrying illegal drugs. Since early September, such strikes by the U.S. in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific have killed at least 83 people in 21 attacks. However, critics have pointed out that the Trump administration has not released any evidence to support its assertions that those killed in the boats were narco-terrorists. The latest move is also seen as the Trump administration increasing pressure on Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, who was charged by U.S. prosecutors in 2020 with narco-terrorism. Trump said on Sunday that some discussions with Venezuela were a possibility, without providing further detail nor specifically mentioning Maduro. The U.S. has long used aircraft carriers to pressure and deter aggression. Some experts say that while the Ford is ill-suited to fighting cartels, it could be an effective method of intimidation against Maduro. Ian Jin, Arirang News.
And back on the local front, the shades of autumn here in South Korea beckoning people beyond their urban settings. And one popular destination is over in Gangwon-do province, where an ancient ginkgo tree continues to gather crowds. Our Cha Yun-kyung reports.
A tree that has stood for over 1,000 years greets another autumn. Golden leaves have settled on its branches, blotting out the sky. Visitors come one after another, eager to enjoy the beautiful sight of the ancient tree.
I believe that this is the best ginkgo tree in the whole world. I am so in love with this tree right now.
The ginkgo tree in Pangeri, Gangwon-do province stands 32 meters tall with a trunk circumference of 16 meters. Its sprawling branches form a small forest of their own, glowing entirely in shades of gold and creating a breathtaking spectacle. Enchanted by its fairy tale beauty, everyone is busy taking pictures to capture the moment.
We came on a family trip to celebrate my mother's 70th birthday. I'd heard that ginkgo trees symbolize longevity, so I really wanted to see it up close. This grand and beautiful tree has made this family trip all more meaningful.
There's an old tale that this tree grew from a sprout that emerged from a monk's staff, which he had stuck into the ground while passing by. Another story tells that a white snake lives inside the tree, making it a sacred being that no one touches. This ginkgo tree was designated as a natural monument in 1964. Last year, analysis by the National Institute of Forest Science confirmed that its actual age is 1,318 years. The Pangiri ginkgo tree, now at the peak of its autumn colors, is expected to maintain its breathtaking beauty for about another week. 차윤경, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. Chileans are voting today for a new president and parliament in an election focused heavily on organized crime and immigration. This is the first of two expected rounds, with no presidential contender projected to reach the 50% needed to avoid a 14th of December runoff. Voters face sharply different options: Communist Party member and former minister Janet Jara and conservative Jose Antonio Cast, among several right-wing challengers. For the first time in Chile's history, voting is mandatory for all eligible citizens, with millions of newly registered voters and fines for those who abstain. Preliminary vote counting results are scheduled to be announced at 8 p.m. local time on Sunday. Thousands of Mexicans protested on Saturday against the drug-related violence that claims tens of thousands of lives each year. In Mexico City, a peaceful march turned violent when some protesters threw rocks at riot police. Authorities report about 100 officers were injured and 40 were taken to hospital, with around 20 protesters also hurt. Clashes also erupted in Guadalajara, where 47 people were detained and several more were injured. Demonstrators demanded stronger security, pointing to the recent killing of a local mayor who had fought drug gangs. Mexico's president condemned the violence. In the U.S., a major feud inside the Republican Party is escalating as Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and President Donald Trump break publicly. Greene says Trump's recent attacks calling her a, quote, traitor are putting her safety at risk. She told CNN on Sunday that she still supports Trump, but disagrees with his reluctance to release all federal files linked to Jeffrey Epstein. Their relationship has deteriorated in recent weeks over Trump's focus on foreign policy and Greene's push for full release of Epstein files. The House is expected to vote this week on a bill that would force the Justice Department to release all unclassified Epstein records. The Vatican hosted several Hollywood figures on Saturday as Pope Leo met a group of actors and directors, including Cate Blanchett and Spike Lee. The event at the Pope's Apostolic Palace aimed to deepen the church's dialogue with cinema and highlight the role of artistic creativity in promoting human values. The audience is also part of the Catholic Church's wider cultural program during its Holy Year. Choo Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Today, the early winter cold has come around all of a sudden. Cold weather advisories have been issued in some parts of Gangwon-do Province, Chungcheongbuk-do Province, Gyeongsangbuk-do Province, and Busan. Today's daytime temperature only topped out at 5 degrees Celsius in Seoul. As the wind blows strongly, the temperature will feel 3 to 4 degrees lower than the actual readings. Tomorrow will be even colder than today. The first sub-zero cold this fall is expected in Seoul. A freezing morning of -3 degrees will appear and it will feel like -7 degrees. Please dress extra warm. Tomorrow morning, Daejeon will start off at -2 degrees, Chuncheon at -5 degrees. Daily highs will rise up to single digits in most areas with Seoul at 6 degrees, Chuncheon, Daejeon, Daegu, and Gyeongju at 7 degrees. From tonight, it will start to rain on the southwest coast, the Jeollado provinces, and Jeju Island. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.